Forget about success. The only important thing for you, it's fullness of life. And you achieve this when you develop character, when you're faithful to your conscience till the very last day of your life. Leadership, it's about becoming an excellent person. It's about personal growth, even if you have to die for that. Each one of us has a biological inclination, has a specific temperament, and you have to identify what is the virtue that is for you a challenge so that you can work on that virtue.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lila Rose podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about excellence in leadership and discovering one's temperament so that we can grow to become more virtuous and really more all-around, fully alive people. I'm really passionate about this topic at the podcast. I've read endless business books on these topics, endless leadership books on these topics, have listened to all of sort of the gurus of today. But one person that I think is not well known enough and has a ton of value to offer this space is none other than Alexandre Havard. He's not from the United States. He's originally French. He's from now Russia. He travels the world internationally. He speaks several languages, but he writes a lot of books about virtue in leadership and temperaments. So today we're going to have an amazing conversation about the temperaments, about how to discover your temperament, and how by learning how we are naturally and biologically, we can develop our character so that we can be true leaders that can then change the world. Love topics like this. So without further ado, let's welcome Alex to the podcast. Alexandre Havard, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So I met you first, I don't know, once really. I think it was the one, maybe twice now, but it was over 15 or over 10 years ago.
Yep.
Maybe going into 15 when I was living in DC and you were there giving a talk on virtuous leadership. And I was like, this stuff is awesome. Mm-hmm. This guy's awesome. I'm glad you're on the show. We have a lot of Americans on the show, but you are not American, which is great.
Obviously, I'm not.
But you've written 7 books on leadership and virtue and personality development.
Yeah, 7 books now in 15 years.
And traveled around the world to speak on this and train on this.
All over the world, on the 5 continents, people are interested in virtuous leadership. I fly. I speak with them. My books are translated into 20 languages.
Wow.
So I have to go and see the people
that
read my books. So that's why I'm here with you guys.
And how many languages do you speak?
I speak 5, but because life is like this, I had to speak 5 languages, but I work in 4 languages.
Only 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, we have a lot to learn, I feel, from Europeans about life. In some ways, enjoying life. There's the criticism of Americans, we work too obsessively.
Yeah.
And in Europe, you appreciate beauty and you take breaks.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I know a lot of Europeans who don't appreciate beauty and don't.
That's just when I'm on vacation in Italy, when I went to study abroad for a month in Rome.
The thing is that in America, you have the American dream, so you have to be always on the move.
Yeah.
It's a part of your culture. It's the why the American system is. America is a country of movement, of activism. There are good things and bad things there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with a good thing that we have in common. We both admire, but you knew him personally, Jérôme Lejeune. And I want to just hear, because you knew him, and I want to hear what that was like. Jérôme Lejeune, you are French, he's French, and he is the inspiration behind the Lejeune Foundation, which is extremely important in the pro-life space internationally. So we'd love to start there, and then I want to get into the leadership formation stuff.
In fact, to speak about Jérôme Lejeune, excuse me if I pronounce it the French way.
Excuse me, I pronounce the American way.
Pronounce it the American way. Jérôme Lejeune was a very good friend of mine. I met him for the first time about 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, 35 or 40 years ago, when I was living in Strasbourg. I was a lawyer there at Strasbourg. I was a barrister. And I was organizing an international meeting, a pro-life meeting. And he was one of the speakers there. And we met for the first time there 45 years ago. And when we speak about Lejeune, in fact, we speak about leadership. Because this person was a real leader in his field. Jerome was the most famous geneticist of the 21st century. I mean, they created in Paris, in the Sorbonne University, and the chair of genetics, of fundamental genetics, only for him. And he was 38. He was the youngest professor of genetics, of medicine in France. 38 years old. Do you remember Jerome is very famous because in 1958, he discovered the cause of the Down syndrome. Yeah, 1958. And then Jerome was a very interesting personality because like many scientists, he was of a phlegmatic temperament. You know, the phlegmatic people are people that are very rational, very quiet, they don't speak much, they like peace, and their approach to reality is very scientific. So they look like biologically that they are not people of greatness.
Because they're not so intense and driven.
Because they don't look very intense, they
Yeah.
look reserved, shy, timid.
And the phlegmatic temperament is what this famous geneticist, he discovered how Down syndrome happens.
Well, this
your friend.
Yeah, because it's typical for those kind of people to make great discoveries because they are dispassionate, they're very scientific. You have a lot of phlegmatic people in science.
Was Einstein a phlegmatic? Do you
I
think?
don't know. I didn't study Einstein.
With that hair, you think choleric or something.
No, I don't think he was a choleric.
Okay.
But Jérôme was a real phlegmatic person. He was not speaking much. He was listening a lot. He practiced empathy. He was listening to people, and he's the one who made that famous discovery. And then he went to San Francisco in 1969 to receive a big award, the most important award for genetics, 1969. And he had to make a speech there. So he arrived in San Francisco and he began to speak about people around, medical doctors, scientists. And they were telling him one thing, Jérôme, thank you very much for this discovering. Now we can identify those babies with Down syndrome and we can kill them in the womb of the mother. Thanks for your discovery. The guy was shocked. Jérôme was a depression.
Depression.
Christian.
Oh, he was
profoundly Christian. He had a Christian vision of the world. He loved people. And so he was frightened. He was shocked by what they were telling him. And so he took the microphone. He gave a speech. And he spoke about the dignity of the human person from the very beginning. It was the first, you remember 1969, it's very much, we're in the very beginning of the culture of death. The pro-death people are taking over all the world, especially here in California. And Lejeune came at the very moment when everything began. And Lejeune understood, I have a mission in life. You know, this very phlegmatic person understood that he has now a mission in life. And his mission is going to be to speak the scientific truth about the commencement of human life. So all his life is going to speak about human life from a scientific point of view. He said, I'm not a bishop, I'm not a priest, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a philosopher. My field is science. And I know as a scientist that genetics now tells us that if the embryo is not a human being 100% at the moment of fertilization, then it will never be a human being. Never. So that the Queen of England was not a chimpanzee during the first 2 weeks of her life. So he had a sense of humor that was very incredible. But then they began to hate him because he was speaking as a scientist. You know, when the Pope speaks, when the Bishop speaks, we'll listen to them and say, okay, it's normal, it's their stuff. When a scientist speaks about science, about human life from a scientific point of view, it's frightening because you know that is a scientist speaking. It is not a priest. It is not moral theology. This is pure science. If it is not a human being at the very moment of conception, it will never be a human being. So Jerome said, you can follow the law of your country. You can accept the law of your country. But this is political correctness. Remember that, he said. Remember always one thing. Science abhors obscurantism. And those guys who make laws saying during the 3 first weeks, you can make abortion because this is not a human being, said these guys this is absolute obscurantism. This is
anti-science.
Anti-science. This is obscurantism, anti-science. This is Middle Ages. Darkness. This is darkness. We're coming back, 2,000 years. So he was very precise about the words he was using. And that's why he has a big impact. And when he was speaking on TV, he was so charming, so quiet, phlegmatic. He knew how to use his phlegmatism. He was very scientific, words, very dispassionate. And he was speaking the truth. So he was always winning when there was a debate on TV. So the pro-death people decided to prohibit access to TV. So he
him?
Yeah, he could not anymore.
How did that work? So people just stopped asking him on shows, even though he's the most famous geneticist in the world, but because he's so pro-life and he kept talking about it, they just stopped having him on?
Yeah, because this is already the beginning of the 1970s. It's the time of the law on abortion in France. So all the lobbies, of course, the people with money and the intelligence, the French intelligentsia, of course, they have power. And so they explained people we should not invite anymore Lejeune. So he was not anymore invited. And he suffered a lot. He lost all his money. He couldn't go with his investigation because he had no money. And he died the day of Easter. Sunday of Easter 1994. Incredible. On the morning of the day of Easter. And in his tomb, there are only 4 letters. Nika. It means in Greek, victory.
Amazing.
It's an amazing story and he was a good friend of Pope John Paul II.
Amazing.
On May 13th, 1981, when people tried to kill John Paul, do you remember? That day, Jerome had lunch with him.
Wow.
Just 1 hour before.
Right before they tried to assassinate John Paul II.
Just before they tried to assassinate him.
Wow.
Just one or a few hours before. Just incredible. And that's why when Jean Paul II came to France a few years after Jerome's death, the first thing he did is to take a car, the first thing he did, and to go to pray, to pray at the tomb of Jérôme Lejeune.
Wow.
They were very good friends. And Jérôme is not very, very famous, but I promise that in a few years, maybe, in a few decades, when all the darkness of the pro-death culture will be over, he will be really, really famous. He will be the great prophet.
What's so powerful about Jérôme Lejeune is that's my American pronunciation, but he was so celebratory of the dignity of all persons, including the person with Down syndrome. Obviously he discovered how Down syndrome originates genetically, and the thing that he was celebrating is the thing that the culture he's fighting against is actively trying to destroy.
Yeah,
these children, and now the Jerome, his foundation that you said his wife began, but is there to advocate for the rights of these children and their protection. He
loved them. He said these guys, it's not that they have something less, it's they have too much. They have too much. That's why they're like this.
What did he do to serve children with Down syndrome?
Well, he explained parents what's that is. And they explain parents that how to deal with them, how to love them, and so he make parents understand that this is just life, and that this boy or this girl is just like anybody else. He has more than the others. That's why he looks strange because he has too much,
Genetically, an extra chromosome.
Yeah, an extra chromosome. Yeah. So he did a lot, but he did a lot for many people. He did a lot also for the pregnant women. He created those houses for pregnant women who wanted
homes.
Who wanted to have an abortion. And he was one of the first who created those places where pregnant women could go and could be sure that someone's going to take care of the child. So he was not just a pro-lifer. He was very close to the reality, and he knew very well how to help people in a very practical way.
It's beautiful. A big thank you to our sponsor, 7weekscoffee.com. 7 Weeks Coffee is America's pro-life coffee company, gourmet, delicious small batches of your favorite coffee roasts, and you can have it delivered right to your door. I love 7 Weeks. I drink 7 Weeks. I love their Ethiopian medium roast. They have all kinds of roasts to choose from. This is gourmet coffee that you're going to enjoy. Best of all, when you sip that steaming cup of hot coffee, 10% of all of the revenue to 7 Weeks goes directly back to the pro-life movement, to pregnancy resource centers to support moms and dads and babies in need. So whenever you order from 7 Weeks, you're not only going to order an amazing cup of coffee, you're also going to support the pro-life movement. Check it out today, 7weekscoffee.com, and use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. That's 7weekscoffee.com, and you can use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order.
Yeah.
You mentioned he was a phlegmatic, but then you're like, but he was a leader. All right, so let's start with the temperaments.
Yeah.
You've written a lot about temperaments and helping people understand what their temperament is so they know how to grow in virtue and as leaders. So let's start with what are the temperaments and how people can discover what their temperament is.
Yeah, I've been writing a lot in the past on the virtuous leadership, so on the virtues, on how do you multiply, how to grow in virtue, in character. But then after I discovered that we need a starting point. Each one of us has has biological inclinations, has a specific temperament, and you have to identify what is the virtue that is for you a challenge, so that you can work on that virtue, only on that virtue, not on all the virtues, just on that virtue. And you will discover that working on that virtue, all the other virtues come in, because that virtue is for you the really challenging virtue. And I'm going to explain to you how do you see this.
So wait, one quick question here to jump in right away, because this is immediately what's in mind, and maybe we've heard in culture, focus on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. So if your natural virtue is, let's say, initiative, courage, you just go out and take charge, just do that. And don't worry about the fact that you're not patient, as an example, right?
I don't like this, because you don't have to work much. If you're a choleric, you are action-oriented. You're born a manager. You don't need to work on that. You have it. What you have to work on, it's what you don't have. So I agree with the idea that you have to discover your talents and you have to multiply your talents. But you have to remember one thing. The temperament is biological talent. You don't have to work much on it. You don't have to work at all on your temperament. It is your biological innate inclination. You have to work on specific talents you have received from God. That's obvious. But you don't have to work on your biology. Your biology is here. And what you have to work, it's on the virtue, which is difficult for you to practice because of that very specific biology that you have. So let's take some example. Choleric people, there are 4 temperaments.
Yeah, explain the temperaments.
More than 2,000 years ago, there was a guy, a medical doctor in Greece called Hippocrates. And he said he discovered that
American is Hippocrates.
Hippocrates. He called Hippocrates.
I like Hippocrates.
Yeah, Hippocrates is good. It's Hippocrates. Thanks for correcting.
No, you're probably correct. That's just how we say it.
Hippocrates, yeah. Yeah, and he discovered that there are 4 basic biological inclinations as human beings, and we call them after that the temperaments. And the first he said is it's choleric person. Of course, the name he gave to this type is wrong, because it has to do with the liquids in the body. Because he thought that the temperaments are related to the liquids that you have in the body. But science has demonstrated that it's not related to the liquids. It's related to the genes, genetical. Temperament is something genetical. It has nothing to do with the liquids that you have in the body. So choleric comes from chole in Greek, Sanguine, it's blood, So all the phlegmatics, phlegma. So all these are liquids that you have in your body. So he made a mistake about the origin of the temperaments, but he didn't make any mistake about the temperament itself. This is what is interesting. It's not the name. What's interesting is the content of the temperaments. So he discovered that you have people that we call the choleric, and we go on calling them cholerics, and I like it because we don't need to change words. People have been using those words for 2,000 years. Why would we change that? That's a choleric person. It doesn't mean that he's angry or he has a lot of wrath. No, he's a choleric means he's action-oriented, biologically speaking. It's not because he's an American that he's action-oriented. It's not because of the American dream. It's not about culture. He's action-oriented because he's biologically a choleric. So choleric are people that are action-oriented because they were born like this. They're born choleric. So they need to set goals. They need to achieve those goals, and they will never stop until they have achieved the goals. So they are not interested in the processes. They are interested in the results, in the material results. We call those people managers. So you have a lot of people that are born managers. No one is born a leader, because we'll speak about after that, I think.
I'm laughing because I don't resonate with, I've never really been like, I'm a choleric, but the whole thing about we don't like processes, we like the end result, I identify with that very much.
Yeah, so, those people, they have a talent that is their biology, a lot of energy, they are very active, they know how to set goals and achieve those goals. And we like those people, especially in America, and we give them big salary because they know how to get things done. Even
if they trample over people doing it.
That's the thing. So we don't care about the people, we care about the results.
But we do care about the people, but only with the results, right? I mean,
the people are not so important. But for the choleric person, what's important is the biological result. It's the result, the material one. So this is first reaction. If you're a choleric, you shouldn't be surprised that your first reaction is, it's not people. Your first reaction is going to be material results. So your second reaction now is going to be, what do I do with that? And your second reaction is spiritual. It has to do with character. And it has to be a reaction of humility. So you are challenged by the virtue of humility, which is the virtue of service to the others. Because when you're a choleric and you see people in front of you, you don't see human beings. Your first reaction is, these are human resources. You get it? So you are a human resource because he has in mind a result. How do you achieve results? You achieve results with money, with missionaries, and with people. So people are, for him or for her, if she is a choleric, they are instruments.
What are you, Alex?
I am a melancholic.
Okay, we'll get there in a minute.
So we come to this after.
Yeah.
So the choleric people, they are action-oriented, and we see immediately that if they want to be leaders, they have to be humble. They have to serve people instead of using people. They have to understand that people are more important than things, that the process of achieving results is important, that achieving material results, you have to be sure that your people are going to grow, that your people are going to become leaders themselves, that your people, your employee, your children, your friends, in the process of achieving material results are going to grow. If they are not growing in that process, what you do is evil.
Wow. Say that again.
But if you're not growing in the process of achieving material results, what you do is evil.
Even if what about for someone, because there's these great movers and shakers. I mean, I think about Martin Luther King Jr. as an example, right? And he has this past which is very checkered personally, but professionally, he did amazing things, right? He was this icon. What if your end goal is not material in terms of I want to make money? Your end goal is I want to change the world, but in the process, you're not treating the people right. Is it still an evil? It's an evil to not treat the people right, but...
Yeah, it's evil because people are more important than things. And you cannot...
Or even a mission. At the end of the day, it's how you treat the people.
Absolutely. And because everything is for people. We are the center of everything. It's a very important thing here. It's about, we're teaching you now a very important topic, which is the topic of what's the meaning of work. Your work is not interesting. What is interesting is you, as a worker, are you growing doing that work? The subject of the work is much more important than the object of the work. You understand it? The Marxist, the materialist people say there is no subject. There is only an object. It's the work itself. Because they deny personality, they deny subjectivity in work. In work, what's important? It's you. Are you growing? Are you becoming a better person doing that work? What you're doing, we don't care. It's not so important. If it's a good thing, it's good. But the important thing is you. And we know this. I mean, what's important is not to do a thing, it's to do it with love. If you do the small thing with love, that small thing becomes a big stuff. You agree with me? So the thing is not about doing great things. The thing is about doing what you're supposed to do with big love, and this great love, and this is what transformed the whole world. It is the love you put in the things, in the work that you're doing now. So nobody can say, well, my work has no meaning. And because I tell those people, well, the work has the meaning you put in it. whatever it is. So your heart, your mind, your love has to be inside those things. They're very small, but you are the essence of work. So this is why choleric people should understand that. People are more important than things. We have to achieve results, but we have to help people grow achieving those results, because people are more important than things, because people are an end in itself. You know, I know a lot of magnanimous people who like to set high goals, but they set high goals in order to be sure that their people, their employees, their children, their friends are going to work hard, and they're going to develop creativity, freedom, responsibility, virtue, magnanimity, you know? So when you are like this, then you understand that work is just an instrument to help people grow. The primacy is a human being. So many choleric people have no character, they have no humility, so they achieve results. We look at the team members, they are almost dead, physically, spiritually, psychiatrically sometimes, psychologically. Well, the word is spiritually. When you corrupt people in doing certain things that are wrong, but you achieve results.
What do you do when you're training? You train a lot of people and you're working with leaders, business leaders maybe, and you see this is a raging choleric, but they don't, you know, how do you help them? How do you help them do that, where they walk them off of the hyper ledge of achieve, down to deal with people?
The thing fundamentally...
And love people.
Well, the thing is that fundamentally those people I never heard about the things we're speaking about now. Never. The big problem of humanity today is that people have never heard about those things. Very few people hear about those things. They are just imbued with that culture, and they think in terms of management, getting things done, success. And I tell you, what does this word means? All the great people have been killed, beheaded. Joan of Arc was beheaded. Martin Luther King was killed. Thomas More was... Joan of Arc was not beheaded.
Burned, yeah.
Was burned at the stake. Thomas More was beheaded.
All the presidents, except the one alive right now and the one running for office and a couple others, but the rest are dead. We all die, is your point.
So we all die. No, my point is not that we all die. My point is that, can we say that Thomas More achieved success?
I see.
Can we say that Joan of Arc achieved success? She was burned at the stake at 19 years old. You could say this is not successful. Jérôme Lejeune, who spoke about 1 hour ago, did he achieve success? He was crucified by the media. You know, is this success? Success is not a word. And I speak to young people, I tell them, forget about success. You shouldn't look for success. It's a very subjective thing. And first of all, there are many things in life that you have no control upon. You don't know. You have no control of those things. So success has a lot to do not only with your intellect, your capacities, but also a lot with what's happening in the world, the ideology around you. You know, are you capable of going against the political or cultural correctness? You know, for certain people, no, success means I have to agree with those things. So you destroy yourself, you destroy your conscience, you behave badly because you want to achieve success. The real success is that is a success for someone that can, till the very last moment of his days on earth, be faithful to his conscience. That's his success. Joan of Arc was faithful. Thomas More was faithful. Jerome was faithful. They didn't surrender. Conscience was for them the most important thing. In this sense, I say they achieved success because they had a successful life. Do you remember what this great guy, Viktor Frankl, who wrote that book, Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote about? He said, normal people don't want success. They want fullness of life. You know, plenitude of life. And you achieve this when you're faithful to your conscience. Even if you're in a jail. You're in a jail because you did your job. You know, you were beheaded because you did your job, because you've been faithful to your conscience. You were burned at the stake because you've been faithful. And this is what we call plenitude of life. And you have to tell the youth this. Forget about success. Remember one thing. The only important thing for you It's fullness of life. And you achieve this when you develop character, when you're faithful to your conscience till the very last day of your life. That's leadership. Leadership is not about being successful. Leadership is not about being the number one. Leadership, it's about becoming an excellent person. It's about personal growth, even if you have to die for that. And in the world in which we live today, you can be sure that a new ideology, they don't like people that are leaders. They don't like people with character. They love just zombies, you know. They want you to be a consumer. They want you to be an animal. They don't want you to have a big heart and to be magnanimous. They will go for you. You know, every time there is a revolution, the first thing we do, we kill those people. I know, I studied the French Revolution, the French guy, I know. I studied the Bolshevik Revolution because I'm also Russian. I know Bolshevism, I know the French Revolution. The first people we destroy are the magnanimous ones, which are the dreamers, those who are dreamers and doers at the same time. Real leaders.
Dreamers and doers meaning they are, I don't know, maybe empathetic visionaries. It's that they care for people, and that's why they're doing, but the people are first.
Yeah, dreamers are. Well, this is the virtue of magnanimity. It is the virtue of people that are dreamers. They have a big dream about themselves. They want to be great people, and they want other people to become great people. And they are doers, mean that they transform that dream into a mission. They are not dreaming for dreaming. You know, this is pusillanimity. This is small people. These are voluptuous people. I dream for dreaming because I enjoy the dream. You know, the magnanimous people are people who dream in order to act, in order to do, in order to implement the dream. They are very dangerous people.
So it's like rightly ordered acting.
Exactly.
It's not acting because of the satisfaction of the action of success.
Yeah.
It's ordered towards the good of others.
Absolutely.
And the service.
Absolutely. So we see a lot
That's
of
what
people.
we're aiming for. That's what we want.
As a choleric, people have to think about that.
That's what they need to do, yeah. As I've shared on the show before, I'm very picky about my skincare routine. In fact, I've tried many products over many years and never landed on a product line, a brand that I really love. And then I discovered NimiSkincare.com. That's Nimi Skincare.com. Nimi Skincare is a company that shares our values. It's pro-family and pro-life, but it also is a high-quality, clean skincare brand based on decades of research. They use clinically proven ingredients, and they've got incredible products. Go to NimiSkincare.com today. Check out their lines. I love how simple the products are to use. I love that the ingredients are clean. I really enjoy the hydration cream as well as their brightening sunscreen that I use every single day. I know you or the woman in your life will love their products. So go to NimiSkincare.com today. Use the code Lila at checkout for 15% off your order. That's NimiSkincare.com, and you can use the code Lila at checkout for 15% off your order. Okay, so choleric. What about
This is choleric. So then we have, after that, we have what we call the melancholic people.
That's you.
That's, for instance, me. I'm a melancholic choleric. Normally people have a brand. They are brands. They have mixed temperament. So I am a choleric. I'm a melancholic choleric. What is that? These are not people directed towards action. They are directed towards ideas. They are more contemplative, biologically speaking. More contemplative, more ideas, dream, beauty, goodness, truth. And you have a lot of, they are very creative people. The musicians, the writers, the philosophers, poets, all those people fundamentally are very creative, and they are, because they are melancholics. And melancholy, it is something that it's a bit of self-absorption, introspection, but positive self-absorption, because you're absorbed by your sentiments, by your feelings, by your ideas, and this is what produces, in the end of the day, creativity. So this minimum of self-absorption is good. It's not egotism. It's just a biological inclination. So the melancholic people, they have a big power. It's the power of creativity. You know, they are those people who destroy the status quo in a society. They are. And the choleric, they destroy it because they have both that idea. They've taken the idea from the melancholic people.
So are you very dangerous if you're melancholic choleric?
Yeah, that's
dangerous.
right. You're dangerous people because because you produce ideas that choleric will buy and they will use it, but you're dangerous in a positive way. if you're a good man. And I try to be a good man. So I try to have good ideas. And those ideas, I offer them to my friends that are cholerics, to help them move forward with this, because I know I have difficulty to move with ideas. I have no problem with contemplating the ideas. I have no problem with writing books. I have no problem with speaking, but I may have difficulties with moving.
But if you're a melancholic choleric,
that helps.
It helps a little bit.
It helps, but it depends on how much
Sure.
percentage.
Interesting.
Maybe I am 70% melancholic and 30% a choleric. My cholerism helps me do the thing. But you have a lot of people, they don't have cholerism. They're just 100% melancholic. And then they have no foundation in their biology for action.
So what's for the choleric,
It's humility.
It's humility. They need to grow in humility to see the person, to put the person first, service of the person, not just the goal or the object. What about for the melancholic? What is the virtue to work on?
Action. That is audacity, boldness.
Boldness.
They are afraid of action because the idea is perfect in my heart and in my mind. You know what I mean? So, and I know that the implementation of the idea will be bad because it's material, and also because it's human beings, and human beings are limited. They are sinners, they are limited human beings. So the melancholic people are very afraid of the implementation of the idea. That's why they are biologically cowards. They need the virtue of audacity, of boldness, in order to...
Decisiveness.
Yeah, decisiveness in order to do the job. So that's the challenge. And I've known a lot of people like this who were melancholic that have been developing the virtue of, just think about Martin Luther King. In the end of the day, he was a very melancholic person. He was a writer. He was a poet. I have a dream. He was not born for action.
Wow, you think so?
Yeah, this guy was not born for action at all.
Interesting.
He brought people that were very good in action, very choleric people, and he learned from them action. But he was not born for action. He became a man of action. But you look at his face, you see he has a face of a very melancholic person. Look at his eyes. He's not Othello.
You can tell someone their temperament from the eyes?
Very often.
What am I? What do you think?
Well, I will tell you after.
Okay.
We just began our
Okay.
No, but the truth that you cannot just say like this, looking at the eyes.
Sure.
But when someone is 100% melancholic, you see this in the eyes. When someone is 100% a choleric, you also see it. The Othello type choleric, you see it in the face. When in the face you can see many things, but
or maybe you can see because you're a melancholic.
Yeah, the majority of people, what happens is that they have a brand, so it's very hard to see on the face.
Interesting.
But speaking with people for a while, you discover.
Yeah.
They are more, you will see when we speak about the 4 temperaments, we'll understand better what's that. And then we have the sanguine. The sanguine people, these are people that they are not action-oriented, they are not idea-oriented, they are people-oriented. These are the people that love people, they like to be with people, they like to enjoy life, they like la joie de vivre. They love
Joie de vie.
La joie de vivre.
Joy of life.
Joy of life. They are carpe diem, now, not tomorrow. So tomorrow we're dying. Tomorrow we die. Today we enjoy. Yeah, they're touchy, they like people, they like humanity, and they'll need people around. If not, they die. They are biologically like this. So we call these people the sanguines. The sanguines. A lot of people like this in Africa. A lot of people like this in Italy. A lot of people
I love Italy for that. I'm half Italian, and it's when you describe it, I think my grandmother.
Your grandmother was that?
Oh, everywhere she went, she'd say to people, the stranger on the street, "You and I are related."
So you're sanguine. You're fundamentally a sanguine then.
You think I am?
Maybe 50%.
I can at the end. I'll tell you what I think I've been told I am, and we can do the analysis.
Probably a choleric sanguine.
You think so?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I didn't study you. But I will have to study you a little bit. But the sanguine people, they are very good in communication. But we don't know them. They know that they have a problem. The problem is that they live outside time. So everything is now. There is no future. So what they do, they begin a lot of things because they have fun. They like to begin because it's funny, but they don't finish the job. They don't finish the job because they don't like a routine, because now it's funny, but tomorrow we don't know. So tomorrow we don't do it because we do something else. They love to begin something because to begin is fun.
The worst is, I'll just interrupt and say, I think and I've been told that I am a sanguine melancholic, which is a terribly complicated person to be, because you have these ideals and creativity, but you like the joie de vivre and the people. So it's really hard to get stuff done.
It's not possible. You cannot be a sanguine melancholic.
You can't? Okay.
Because it's the opposite temperament.
But that's why you think...
No, what's going to happen, it's the following thing. Maybe you're a sanguine, which is you're born a communicator. You like people, you love people, you enjoy people. This is your biology. But you have been developing a deep interior life. So you've been trying to become a contemplative person. You've been trying to give meaning to what you're doing. You've been trying to overcome your natural superficiality. You've been trying to finish the job. So we say that you have been developing spiritually, a virtue, which is the virtue of interiority. And then you may have a temptation to think that I have become a melancholic. But you're not.
Or you're a melancholic who's trying to be like a sanguine.
I know a lot of melancholic people that are very good in communications. But their communication has nothing to do with their biology. It's purely spiritual.
They had to work hard on it.
They work on it, and they are good in communication because they love people. And this love is not biological. You understand? It's spiritual. And so a lot of people come to me and say, Alex, I think I have the 4 temperaments. And I tell them, look, you can't, because you cannot be a phlegmatic and a choleric. And you cannot be a sanguine and a melancholic. These are exactly that. These are oppositions.
So you help people identify what is the easiest thing for you to be naturally, without the formation, without the practice, without the interior life. That natural thing, your easiest thing to be naturally, you would call the temperament. And then the work you've done to build the interior life, to build the habits of virtue, that is, now maybe like nature to some degree, right? But it is work you're still doing.
It's your work. And in the end of the day, you are much more your character than your temperament. Because your temperament, it's your parents that lives in you. And your character, it's freedom. You have been developing it. So we can say you are more your character than your temperament.
So someone who's very developed in their character, it might be hard to find their temperament because they're so developed.
Yeah. Although you have some people, even if they are saints, we see their temperaments.
It shines through.
There are a lot of saints, we know exactly what their temperaments are.
Interesting.
Even if they were saints. So they have a lot of character. They could overcome a lot of things. And but still we see they are cholerics or they are phlegmatics. I've known saints. I've lived with saints.
You have?
Yeah.
Who?
I've known very well Blessed Alvaro del Portillo.
Don Alvaro.
Don Alvaro, who was the first, he was the second, he was the first president of Opus Dei just after the founder, San Jose Maria, who was a choleric.
Did you know him?
I didn't know Jose Maria, who was a choleric, but he was a choleric, 100%.
And who was Don Alvaro?
And Don Alvaro was his successor, and he was a phlegmatic, 100%. He had problems, he had difficulties to make decisions, and he did them. He made decisions, but it was hard for him to do it. He was delaying stuff, but as soon as he saw the light, he was a mover and shaker. So he had been developing the virtue of audacity, the virtue of magnanimity. He was a man of character, but he was a phlegmatic. And you could see on his face he was a phlegmatic. He was an engineer. Many engineers are phlegmatics. Escrivá was a lawyer. Many lawyers are choleric people. So there is no surprise here. A lot of saints, have been, you see their temperaments in action. Thomas More was a sanguine. Yeah.
Explain phlegmatic. That's the last one we
so
haven't
now we
gotten
have
the
come to
review
the.
of.
So just before speaking about phlegmatic, we need to see we need to identify the challenging virtue for sanguines, and the challenging virtue for sanguines is going to be endurance, perseverance, finish the job. Okay, if you finish the job, you will be a great leader. You as a sanguine, if you finish the job, if you're persistent, if you're endurant, if you're faithful, then you become an extraordinary human being, a magnificent person, a great leader. So now we have the phlegmatic people. Phlegmatic people, very rational, dispassionate, science. What's their challenging virtue? It's magnanimity, because they don't like dreams, because it's not scientific. A dream is unscientific. So those phlegmatic are not born for being for dreamers, to become dreamers. They're born for reflection, dispassionate reflection, science, etc. So these people, for them, the challenging virtue is really going to be magnanimity, which they have to learn to dream. You know, what's my temperament?
Melancholic.
The melancholic people. I'm sorry. The melancholic people sometimes have just things, words just go out. So
I'm pregnant. That's my excuse why it happens to me.
Yeah, look, the melancholic people, and they have difficulty to implement the dream, but they have no difficulty to dream. The phlegmatic people, they have a problem with dreaming itself. They don't dream. Their problem is not just implementing the dream. Their problem is the dream itself, because they like the status quo. They look like functionaries. But I gave you an example of a great guy, Jérôme Lejeune, who was a phlegmatic and become a man with a beautiful mission, to spread the truth, the scientific truth about the commencement of human life, the beginning of human life. And he had a mission in life. He was a very magnanimous person. And Jérôme Lejeune, as well as Álvaro del Portillo, who was blessed also. And Jerome also, I guess he will be blessed very soon. He is already on the path towards canonization. Those two guys were phlegmatic, very strong phlegmatics. And those two guys had an extraordinary character, and they were very magnanimous. They became dreamers. But they became dreamers. They were not born for dream. They were not born to dream. They became dreamers. They developed the virtue of magnanimity, and they became extraordinary human beings. They became excellent people, So you see, we have the 4 temperaments, and each one of us has to understand what is the virtue that is challenging for him according to the temperament that he is. And then he has to develop that virtue that is going to be a challenging virtue for him, and this is the way for him to become an excellent person, a great leader. And when you study leadership, you see all those 4 temperaments are represented.
Every Life is America's pro-life diaper company. Every Life creates high-quality diapers and wipes for your little one to keep them safe and clean and fresh. And Every Life is a pro-life company, so they're donating some of their proceeds back to pro-life groups like Your Own Live Action. Did you know that a lot of diaper companies today, including like Huggies and Pampers, are owned by pro-abortion entities that support abortion? Can you believe that? Companies that are supposed to be for babies that are actually harming babies. Not Every Life. They're America's only pro-life diaper company, and their products are great. You can check them out today. That's everylife.com, and you can use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. That's everylife.com, and use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. So I think immediately of the people, and maybe this is also my experience to some degree, but maybe it's due to their upbringing or experiences that they had early in life that were very formative. Their temperament is not so obvious, perhaps. So someone's listening right now, maybe people listening are like, yes, I totally identified with all of them. Someone might think, or maybe I'm definitely a sanguine, or someone's listening like, oh, choleric. They call, Alexander called me on that one. But maybe there's someone who's listening who's like, I don't know. What would you say? Do you run into those people? And
yes.
If so, what do you say to them?
Well, you have certain people, because they are, as I've said, they've been practicing virtues, so they don't understand who they are biologically, because they have the virtues, and then they don't know what I'm doing now. This is to do with my biology, or this is something I acquired with time by developing a virtue. So you have to help those people understand who they were when they were very young, because when you're very young, you don't have character. You have only you're a biological individual. Of course, you have a spirit, but you're not working very much on the spirit. It's there. You have a dignity of a human being, 100%, but you still don't have virtues. You're fundamentally your biology when you're very young. So I tell people, remember the way you were when you were young. Ask
How
your
young?
parents. Ask your parents.
Like 5, 4, 3.
Yeah, even before. I mean,
And why is it so important to understand how you were when you were young?
because you understand you make no mistakes about your temperament.
And it's important to know one's temperament, even if you've developed other virtues and you're sort of navigating the life of seeking after excellence.
Look, it's very important for many different reasons, the temperament. First, because you don't judge people. You will stop judging people and will stop judging yourself. Imagine you're a choleric and you have a friend of yours who is a phlegmatic and is coming to you for advice. The only experience you have, it's the experience of cholerism because you're a choleric. So you're going to think this guy is lazy, you see, and this is a lie. This is a big mistake because laziness is a vice and phlegmatism is a beautiful way of being. So you're going to kill the boy before he comes to you for advice. You're going to tell him, look, you have to be like me. And the boy is a phlegmatic. He cannot be like you and doesn't want to be like you and he shouldn't be like you. You know what I mean? He's born for something else. He's born for reflection. He's born for thinking, and you're born for action. So forget about that. The opposite thing is the opposite is also true. I mean, imagine you're phlegmatic, and a choleric comes to you, and you know nothing about phlegmatism and cholerism. You know nothing about temperaments. What are you going to think? You're going to think as a phlegmatic, that lady, she is very proud. Yeah, because choleric people, they like to move. They like to achieve results. They like competition. They like to fight. They like to be the number one. And they love to be the number one. And they show off a little bit. But this is not spiritual. This is biological. And this is a beautiful way of being. We need those people. But you know nothing about that temperament. So you're going to judge that little girl who is a choleric. And instead of thinking she's a choleric, so she's very different than me, so she's challenged by other virtues, you're going to say, she has to change. She has to become like me. Because I am the rule. I am the model.
Such a good advice. And also it prevents people from misunderstanding themselves.
Also yourself.
And judging yourself.
Absolutely. Imagine you're phlegmatic and you don't understand and you compare yourself with choleric people. You will say, I am a lazy person. He's a mover and shaker, and I'm a nobody. When in fact, you're just not born to be a mover and shaker. You're born to be someone else. And you shouldn't compare yourself to that guy. You have other talents, and you have to do another kind of job. So this is the first thing, that is you stop judging people. You know, in melancholic people, you stop saying they are egotic. Because melancholic are self-absorbed. You say he's just a melancholic. And it's good to be melancholic, but it's bad to be egotism is bad, it's a vice, but melancholia is not a vice. When you see a sanguine, you can have a temptation to think this is for superficiality. But superficiality is a vice, but sanguinism is not a vice. It's a way of being, in living in the present. Living in the present. This is a beautiful way of being. So we stop judging people, we stop judging ourselves, and we begin fundamentally to understand what is the virtue that you're going to challenge. So the most important thing in the temperaments is not the communication, it's not judging people, it's fundamentally knowing what's next for me. What should I do now?
Theoretically, though, it could be possible. You know, at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about the advice today about double down on your strengths, ignore your weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, no, you have to you have to examine your weaknesses and grow in your virtue there to be the whole person, to be the excellent person. But I do think it also could be a mistake, to correct me if you think I'm wrong here, to not appreciate, understand, and develop your strengths, your natural virtues, spending all of your time on your weaknesses, because then you're at war with your own talent. You're not actually developing the talent.
Yeah, that's obvious. You have to spend more time developing your talents than controlling your defects.
So it's both.
Okay, but the thing is that the temperament is a very specific talent. It's biological. So when we're saying we should spend more time developing our talents than controlling our weaknesses, we're not speaking about biology. We're speaking about spirituality. It's a very different thing. I repeat, you shouldn't spend time developing your cholerism. You are choleric, forget about it. You know what I mean? You're a mover and shaker. You're born for that. It's not a problem for you. It's not a problem. It's a good thing. But you just do the job because you do it. You don't have to think about multiplying your cholerism. You are a choleric. What you need to think is about multiplying things that are spiritual gifts that you can have. You know, when we speak about focusing on your talents, I think it's fundamentally focusing on multiplying the spiritual talents that you have. You see, but your temperament is here. You cannot improve your temperament. You cannot destroy it. It's what it is, and it will be like this until the day you die. It's biology.
But the key of what you're saying is you also should not be at war with your temperament or judge or condemn your temperament, because that would then be a form of, it can be a talent that then you are.
No, you should never do such a thing, because this would mean to fight against God. God gave you a temperament because He wants you to be that way. So you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself. And the first way of loving yourself is to love the temperament God has given to you. You know, so you have to love your temperament, but you have to understand that temperament means that I have to fight there are certain things I will have to fight for, because they are not going to be easy for me to develop. Because certain virtues are complicated for certain type of temperaments, and other virtues are easy to practice. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. It is that when you know your temperament well, you discover your strength, biological strength, and you discover also certain weaknesses that you have, and you have to overcome them. Because a choleric that forgets about his weaknesses, he becomes a dictator. And you can tell him, look, multiply your strengths, multiply your strengths. He will think, I'm a mover and shaker. Results. His life is going to be this. I have to multiply my strength. And the people around are dead. So this is no good. This guy should understand, what does it mean to multiply my strength? You know, your cholerism is not something you need to multiply. It's something you need to use. When you need to multiply, what you need to multiply is all the gifts that you have. But your cholerism is there. Don't multiply it. You know what I mean? If you're a melancholic, what are you going to multiply? You're just, you're born for thinking, for ideas, for dreams. Don't multiply this too much, because your problem is not about multiplying this. Your problem is, what do you do with that? Do you do the job? Or do you go on thinking and thinking and thinking? You know, if you say to the melancholic people, you have to
dream
focus, dream more. You just kill that person. His problem is not about dreaming more. His problem is about implementing the dream. And this is hard for him. You get it? So we have to be very...
Yeah, that's where you get the idea, whole thing of being tormented. I know I have the melancholic somewhere in me.
You know.
The tormented by dreams thing, where it's just like, you're like under a mountain of dreams, of visions, of ideas, of hopes and directions, and there's no action connected to it, and it's suffocating.
It's suffocating. Yeah. It's awful.
That's why a lot of these creative types,
You know, Dostoevsky wrote a lot about that.
Yes, he did, yeah.
Because he understood when he was young that he was living in a completely interior life that has no reality outside. And he understood he was becoming mad.
Yeah.
And what saved him was action. And he began to move.
Sweet action.
Action. He began to move. He began to do things. He began to write books. He was sent to Siberia.
Was it hard for him to write books, do you think?
I think it was not hard for him to write books because he's a melancholic.
Okay.
But what he did fundamentally was not just to write books. I mean, he began to move. And he moved so much.
But don't you think some melancholics, I don't know if you relate to this, it can be hard to write because every word is imperfect?
No, because melancholic people, they know how to look perfect. They know how to produce a perfect word.
Well, if they try hard enough, you know.
Yeah.
But it can be a painful process, no?
It's a painful process.
Or is that the phlegmatic? Would that be the tendency of the phlegmatic, to have trouble?
The phlegmatic, it's a bit different. I mean, the melancholic people, what they look for, it's certainty. They are afraid of not knowing. Now, if I don't know, I don't do, because I'm afraid of not knowing. The phlegmatic people, they are rational. So the problem for them is mistakes. I don't want to make mistakes.
I see.
So I do nothing until I'm not 200% mathematically sure that this is a good thing to do. The melancholic people, it's not about mistakes. It's about lack of certainty. You know, they have their imagination, their fantasy. They imagine always the worst, you know, the melancholic people. Phlegmatic people have a difficulty to move because they have a difficulty, because They're not sure. They don't want to make mistakes.
So what would be the temperament that has so many ideas and visions and dreams, but really struggles to implement? That is the melancholic.
That's the melancholic people.
But the sanguine also has struggled to implement. Struggles to implement.
No, yeah,
to finish.
The finish, exactly.
The finish,
I mean,
I see.
you want to see very often people confuse the sanguine with the choleric because they are both directed towards action. But the motivation of both is very different. I mean, the motivation of the sanguine, it's the process. He's interested in the process. We're going to be with people, teamwork, fun. But he doesn't care for the results. The motivation of the choleric, it's not the process. It's not people. It's not teamwork. It's what are we going to get from that? You see? So they are moved towards action both, but not for the same reason. And you have to know that.
So how does one discover what their temperament is?
Well, when you live with people that are specialists who knows very well the temperaments, they can help you discover your temperament. When you live with people in your own house, very quickly you would discover the temperaments of people. And
so close proximity to other people in the day-to-day, in the mundane.
Absolutely.
And some, I've heard it said, how do you find out who you really are? Ask the person who really knows you first.
Maybe,
the person closest to you. Like, what do you think? And if they say, you have an image of yourself and then they say, oh, I think you're wonderful, but you struggle with this, or you seem to have a strong suit in this. I mean, do you think that's helpful to ask people close to you that you trust, that love you, not people that want to harm you in any way, but.
No, I think the temperaments, you just notice it the way people behave in your house. So you've known them for years, and you know exactly that they fit very well this temperament, that temperament. You also know a little bit about their struggle and their spiritual life, and you can compensate, with your spiritual life certain defects of biology. But still, you see people strive, people fight, and then it's not so complicated in the end of the day. Well, you have certain people that have some mixtures, 50-50. It's a bit more complicated to identify exactly their temperaments. But when people have something like 70% of one temperament, a basic temperament, a predominant temperament, it's quite easy to identify.
So when someone knows their temperament, what would be the resource you've written on temperaments? What's the book that you have?
I have a book called From Temperament to Character. And also we have a beautiful, good logarithm test, temperament test. People can find it in English in alexhavard.com.
We'll link it. So you can actually take a test online to help you understand your temperament.
The logarithm is good. Of course, for 5% it doesn't work. Because the problem is...
like me, I'm the 5%.
The problem is that the question that we have there are not... This is not a personality test.
Right.
It's a temperament test. Remember, personality, it's temperament plus character. So a personality test, it's what do you do in this situation? Because what do you do in that situation depends on your temperament and character. So the question is not this. The question is, what is your first reaction in that situation? And if you cannot know what's your first reaction, you cannot answer.
But if your first reaction, to your point, is so habituated by character, it's no longer your temperament with the first reaction. That's where it gets confusing.
The first reaction will always be the biological
Really,
one.
always, even with the best of characters.
Yes.
And the best of
absolutely.
habits. Interesting.
The thing is that the more you develop the character, the quicker is your second answer, your second reaction. If you develop character, your second reaction is going to be very quick.
So Jérôme Lejeune, back to your friend and the soon-to-be, we hope, saint. Jérôme Lejeune, his first reaction to maybe hostility against him, things like this, would not be to speak the truth and fight or, be all warm and, let's figure this out. It would be, okay, I know what this saying is incorrect, doesn't compute, it's not correct. Okay, but then
that's it. It would say, maybe I'm sorry for those guys that don't understand basic things, and that's it.
His character would tell him, you must stand up and speak now.
Absolutely, that's why he's a saint.
And that's why he's a saint. And so I think that's the little secret here is what is the thing that is the right thing to do, but perhaps the hard thing to do. And the opposite of that is perhaps the temperament that you have, and then the thing to do is the path to sanctity.
Yeah, the path to sanctity has to do with the development of character. And we spoke about a lot of people, about their different temperament. And we see they've been fighting all their life against the weaknesses of their temperaments. Of course, they've been multiplying the strength, but they've been fighting. They've been trying to overcome those difficulties of temperament. And they did very well. That's why they're great people. If not, they wouldn't be saint. Because holiness is it's not just a supernatural activity. It has a lot to do with human nature, with the development of character, of natural virtues, of human virtues. Remember, in theology, we say that grace finds ground in nature. Where there is no nature, there is no grace. So if you are not generous, not magnanimous, not audacious, God can send you faith, hope, and charity, but it will not work. It will not work. I mean, piety doesn't resolve the problem of lack of virtue. Remember that. Lack of virtue is a big problem. People that are pious but have a lack of virtue, they look very strange.
So when you say that, you're talking about, let's say, the church person who's praying all day, who's like in the church, who's singing worship music, whatever, but they're not doing that daily grind of self-awareness against building the character, developing the virtue.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's this sounds harsh, but maybe that in the world's eyes, when they see this, they're like, well, I don't want that.
This is what I mean. These people
they see this
strange.
person. I don't get this person.
Awkward.
Yeah.
They look awkward. Weird, as you say in English. They're weird. Yeah, people don't want to be like this because it's not human.
But I think a special danger is sometimes when we get a little weird in the faith and we're sort of going the route of our temperament without self-awareness, without understanding how it's affecting other people, without developing the virtue, the character intentionally. And people say, you're weird or we're unattractive. We say, well, that's just because they hate the faith. Have you seen this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't see exactly what you're speaking about.
So meaning that the person doesn't have the self-awareness, or the person is sort of caught up in a way self-absorbed in the faith, in their own experiences.
Yeah.
But they blame other people's rejection of them on, they reject the faith.
Okay, got it. And I think the problem with those people, they didn't find Christ. If they are strange like this, they found something else. Because there is an incredible relation between nature and supernature. So if you are normal, you can find the normal Christ. If you're not normal, the Christ you will find will not be the normal one.
And that's where we get cults.
And that you become a very strange guy, you know what I mean? Wow. Christ is 100% human. He's 100% God, but he's also 100% human.
And what was Christ's temperament?
Christ is such an incredible guy with his mother Mary.
He was perfect.
They are so perfect that it's very hard to know what's their temperaments.
But you think they had one?
I think it's hard to say, but when you look at Christ praying on Holy Thursday, you say, this guy is a melancholic. When you see Christ driving out the business people from the temple, you say, this guy is a choleric. When you see Christ with the sinners, drinking, eating, making jokes, you say, well, this guy is a sanguine. And when you see Christ, when the woman caught in adultery, when they brought that woman to him and he doesn't answer anything and he writes something on the floor, he said, well, only a phlegmatic can do such a thing. I would have killed those guys before they come to me. He was so quiet. It's you say, how do you keep your peace when you have so many evil people around? You have to say the word. And he didn't say anything, just write something on the floor. So what's impressed in Jesus Christ is that it's very hard to know what's his temperament because of the perfect balance everywhere.
Biologically, he was perfectly balanced.
But he was a perfect man, so he has a temperament. But it's a mystery. And maybe it's better that we don't know that. What was his temperament? Because somebody could say, well, I am like Christ. you know.
Wow. All right. Well, we have just a couple more minutes, but I don't know if at this point you know what I am by now. I don't want to make it all about me, but any advice, any final words of advice? We could talk. There's so much more we could speak on you, and you've got such great books and work. But
advice I would say to people: look, the world that's coming now is going to be very bad. There are going to be a lot of frustrations. There will be a big struggle. There will be evil. Absolute evil is coming. I see it. I feel it.
You mean geopolitically, culturally?
No, culturally. Fundamentally, culturally, politically. You don't have to speak about maybe geopolitical also, but I don't speak about that. I think the whole civilization we've been building during the last 40 years is collapsing. It's the collapse of the Enlightenment project. We're seeing the collapse.
The culture of death.
The culture of death. I mean, communism was just one part of it. But there is another part that we thought didn't exist, but it exists very much. So the Enlightenment project is not finished. It's finishing now. And it's going to collapse, and it's going to be very heavy for people. And so my advice is this. It is that whatever the situation is, you have to be capable of understanding these are opportunities of growth. The only thing is when things become radical, you have to make radical choices. And then there is no third choice. You become a pig or a saint. This is what Viktor Frankl was.
A pig or a saint?
A pig or a saint.
Wow.
This is what Viktor Frankl said about Auschwitz. When he was in Auschwitz, he noticed that there was only two ways. The way of survival, which is to become a pig. You become a pig because you can survive as a pig. But you can, as a saint, you will die, you will be killed. Because you have to speak the truth, because you have to be faithful to your conscience. So he said, if you made a decision inside yourself to be faithful to your conscience, you obviously will die. And these were the saints in Auschwitz. And the pigs were those who thought, for me, what's important is to survive. But in order to survive in a concentration camp, you have to do certain things that transform you into a pig. You see what I mean? And this is going to happen now. In the modern civilization, all of us, each one of us, is going to be confronted with that reality. What is the decision I am taking now in the depth of my heart? Do I want to be faithful to my conscience and take the risk of dying? Or do I want to survive at any price and then become a pig? So this is something that people need to think about because there is no third way. Today there is still a way in between. You know what I mean? But I think in the coming years, there won't be any way in between. You have to be radical. And this has a lot to do with temperament, with character, and this has a lot to do with what we were speaking about before. This faithfulness to your conscience, this understanding that success is not a word. The only important thing is fullness of life. And you achieve fullness of life not when you're a pig, but when you're a saint. That's it. So simple, so true. It's not easy to do. But with Christ, everything is possible.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming onto the podcast. That was so powerful. Where can people find your work? I know you mentioned earlier, but remind us again. So you can find my work in alexhavard.com. You have all my books there. And that's Havard, Havard.
That's right, Havard. Yeah. Well, you can pronounce it the way you want. Harvard, just don't say
not
Harvard. Forget it.
Havard.
I don't want to hear about any Harvard. It has to be Harvard or Havard.com. And then you don't have only the books, you also have courses. I have courses.
Amazing.
Courses, 7 courses on the temperaments, on character, on magnanimity, on humility, on education of the heart. So on the 4 cardinal virtues, we have courses on everything. Fundamentally, those courses, it's more or less one book. 7 books, 7 courses. Short courses, about 1 hour and a half, 2 hours each. You can spend with me 15 hours. That's a lot. And that's very cheap, very cheap.
Discount code?
Yes, that can be.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just get in touch.
We'll come up with one. Yes. Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Lila Rose podcast. Make sure to check out Alexandre Havard's work. It's fantastic stuff, and I think it can really help all of us grow in virtue and excellence. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. If you have not subscribed already, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever, and you're not subscribed, you're not going to get notifications. So don't forget to do that. Leave us a review if you have not already. And then if you're on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed. We have like some videos, 70 to 80% of the audience is not subscribed yet. If that's you, subscribe. subscribe today, and then you will not miss another episode, especially if you ring that notification bell. Also, we have at locals.com, the Lila Rose podcast community. We'd love for you to join. It's a free speech platform, so if we get messed up on YouTube or somewhere else, you can still access our content and our updates. So please subscribe to our Locals page and become a paying member, so that will help support this podcast. And we look forward to seeing you guys there, and we'll see you next time for the show.